the carnivore diet, and the day I realized that vegetables and superfoods were making me sick. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. And specifically, I'm going to cover a little bit of what I've learned in this great book, Toxic Superfoods by Sally K. Norton. You can research her here on YouTube, and I will also leave some links in the show notes. But wow, was this an eye-opener for me. Now, I've shared a little bit of my journey, and I won't get too far into that, but over the course of time, as I began to wean myself off of grains and gluten and ultra-processed foods, cut out a lot of dairy from my diet, I began to really explore superfoods, chia seeds, hemp seeds, the seeds and nuts category, certainly vegetables, cacao powder, a lot of different ideas that were out there that I found on the internet under what I would deem as reputable sources, which I ultimately realized were only telling me part of the story. While yes, there are some good things that these different categories of food can do in our bodies, it's not all what it's cracked up to be. And there is a certain thing in these plant-based foods called oxalates. What are oxalates? Oxalates are a natural part that plants and nuts and seeds have in them, incorporated in them, to help them stay alive and to procreate themselves. Every living creature has the desire to procreate and live on. And so these are toxins and poisons that are put into the plant by nature to ward off animals, humans, and other predators from stopping them from keeping their species alive. Now, I had never heard of that. I had read The Plant Paradox by Dr. Stephen Gundry and was familiar with some of that, was starting to use the Instapot more to remove lectins and different things from the vegetables that I would eat, specifically beans and grainy type foods like that fall into that category, as well as tomatoes and different foods like that. But it was interesting as I began to eliminate all the whites from my diet, white flour, white rice, white potatoes, and begin to incorporate other things, what I began to realize is that a lot of my symptoms did not go away. And then over the course of time, some of them began to get better. I was suffering from different things like brain fog or feeling disoriented, lack of motivation, inflammation and joint pain, a little bit of neuropathy in my feet, or just these tingly sensations. And occasionally I would find myself like almost jumping, like a mosquito was biting me in the leg or somewhere in my arm. I began to notice occasionally just these little white spots that were almost like acne or a zit or something coming up, that would just stay there and linger. It wasn't like the typical thing that I had experienced. Occasionally I would get crustier eyes, just different things. And I just attributed that to allergies or, just something upset in my universe. But I never really factored it too much into the foods that I was eating. Then along my journey, I found myself exploring the carnivore diet because I kept thinking, what the heck? Like, I'm a 90-10 girl. I had cut out most grains, alcohol, ultra-processed foods, sugar. I was just using so many different superfoods to fulfill my eating needs. And for the most part, like, I didn't feel terrible, but over time, I began to notice the slide. And I finally thought, I'm going to give carnivore a try. And maybe that's where you are in your journey. I'm Jackie Ulmer. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and find my playlist here on my carnivore keto journey, how I started, and ultimately I'm going to share with you as I go along, because I don't know that this will be an eating protocol for me forever, but it's certainly something that I'm doing now. An interesting thing happened about 7 months into my carnivore journey. I initially noticed a few things clearing up, but then all of a sudden I got slammed by kind of urinary and bladder challenges where I felt that need to go to the bathroom quite often. I felt, again, like more of these little prickly, sticking things were happening in along my eyebrows and certainly in my eyes. in my legs. Like I mentioned, I would feel like a mosquito was biting me, and I would pull up my pants or slap down at the bottom of my leg, and there would be nothing there. But it was like almost these phantom feelings of something weird going on. And as I kept exploring Dr. Ken Berry and Sean Baker, and I'm trying to think of some of the other carnivore doctors and different people that I followed, I came upon this book by Sally K. Norton, as I mentioned, Toxic Superfoods, and a lot of the information that was being shared about oxalates and the food that we consume. Now, here's the interesting thing. As I read through this, I was absolutely horrified. First and foremost, it named many of the symptoms that I was already experiencing, including, as I mentioned, specific bladder challenges, things that were very, very new to me: muscle pain, fatigue, brain fog. I wasn't feeling migraines, but some people do. Anxiety, brain function issues. These are just a few of the things. Rheumatoid arthritis. These are some of the things that she names in this book that many people experience. And she also mentioned that sharp feeling of something poking out of your skin or something going on. And that to me was kind of the most alarming, because I kept thinking, what the heck is going on with me with these little achy, breaky, weird things going on in my body? And the more that I read this book, the more intrigued I got, the more relieved I got, and the more frustrated I got. All three things at one time. I was certainly relieved to think maybe I have finally found the answer, because I would do blood panels. I would go to the doctor. They kept saying the same things. Oh my gosh, you like have the systems and the body of a 45 to 47-year-old. Keep doing whatever you're doing. Okay, but nothing was showing up anywhere that was leading to a solution for what I was feeling. Now, there were plenty of doctors that wanted to probe me and do a lot of different things like that, try a prescription, maybe anti-anxiety, different things along those lines. But I knew that was not going to fix the root cause of whatever was going on with me. And that's what I really wanted. I didn't want a Band-Aid or a quick fix. I wanted to figure out what was actually going on and correct that. And so as I read through this book, it was so interesting, because here are the primary foods that I was eating on an almost daily basis, consuming in large quantities, and that happened to fall on the very high oxalate list. And see if any of these resonate with you. Almonds, that was probably my worst offender. Not only the nuts themselves, but the nut butter that I was often putting in my smoothies, putting in my recipes, putting in my morning bulletproof coffee occasionally. And then certainly almond flour. If you've watched any of my prior videos with recipes, my paleo muffins that I love to make, I used almond flour primarily to replace regular flour in almost all my baking. It was going in my muffins. It was going in my quiche crust. It just really, I do my flaxseed almond flour crackers that I used not only for crackers, but also to make flatbread and pizza. So many things like that. As I looked at this list, I thought, oh my gosh, no wonder I'm having what's called this huge series of oxalate dumping. And I'll come back to that. So almonds, certainly probably my biggest culprit. Seeds, my morning seed cycling that I've shared before with chia and hemp seeds, and then a rotation of pumpkin and flax seeds, or sesame and sunflower seeds, but plenty of seeds and nuts. And then on top of that, I usually added slightly less than a quarter cup of macadamia or pistachio or some type of nut to satiate me, to make it taste good. It was almost like the solution for cereal. And I was also doing berries, blueberries and or raspberries, which I found out raspberries are right up there on the very high list as well. Certainly sweet potatoes. I was eating plenty of sweet potatoes. Spinach, a lot of spinach, whether cooked or, in my tomato basil soup, or certainly as an accompaniment to the lettuce in my salads. Although I had already cut back on eating raw salads and raw vegetables, because I was already sensing some disruption in my digestive system when I did that. All of these foods were still a huge part of my daily routine and my morning routine with my black Earl Grey bergamot tea. I was definitely bummed to cut that out. through this process, I was also reducing my dairy intake, which interestingly, dairy is one of the things, the calcium in dairy is one of the things, or the calcium in general is one of the things that helps bind to these oxalates when they get in your system and help flush them from your body. So not only was I reducing the normal systems that were in place that my body would normally incorporate to flush my system of these oxalates, I was completely overloading it with the food that I was eating on a daily basis. Again, thinking that these were superfoods and were serving me well. Turns out, not so much. So I just started my journey to begin to rid myself of some of these symptoms. And I'm already feeling a sense of relief and a sense of healing in some of the areas. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you, it's not an overnight fix for everybody. For some people it is. I'm already feeling some relief with some things that I've incorporated in. And hopefully you will too if you're experiencing that. And if you're just starting on the carnivore journey, pay attention to this potential situation that might befall you. Now, one of the reasons that this became prevalent for me with carnivore and might for you and for others, because in the beginning, your body's doing its normal thing. But as you're not bringing in any of these oxalates on a regular basis and your system isn't processing them, what it will begin to do is it will begin to dump them or shed them, and very often at a very fast pace. And that's what I realized was happening for me. I just was feeling these sharp pains almost everywhere in my body. And if you research oxalates, you will find that they often show up as little crystals or little like granular sandy things. And even if you look at some of the images on the internet, you will find that it also shows up as like almost like sword-like little shards. And that's what I would say sometimes. Sometimes I would say it feels like there's little ice picks trying to come out of my skin. And now I feel like I have a better idea of exactly what that is. The interesting thing is I've never been a vegan, but I've definitely been an 80%er when it comes to vegetables and these superfoods. I thought I was feeding my gut well and doing all these different things, bulking up with fiber, all the different things that would lead my body down a path of not only healing, but staying strong and staying functional all the way through. And I will forever be grateful to the carnivore way of eating for really making me become aware of different things that were going on. And had it not been for carnivore and me starting to research different things and having these people like Sally K. Norton and this book and the other interviews that she's done on YouTube channels and videos show up in my feed, I might not have figured this out for a long time, because in all of my doctor visits and all of my research of this, I never could actually find anywhere where it referenced my situation with oxalates. Now, interestingly, it's not scientifically a thing yet. And I keep thinking about it, and it's like so many things. Who is going to fund a study like that? We always have to ask when there's not enough scientific data around it. Don't assume that that means that it's not a thing. I have learned to assume that that means there's nobody currently willing to pay for the study to do this, because certainly the superfood companies aren't going to, the big vegetable and, seeds and all of those who profit. Big Pharma's not going to, because they want to give you a pharmaceutical to help you kill the symptoms, but not address the root cause. So really and truly, I'd like to reach out to the American Dairy Association or the Beef Association or the Cattle Association or regenerative farmers or anybody who raises meat and animal proteins to potentially consider having this on their blog, funding the study, because I think it would bode well for their industry and really help the rest of us who are struggling with different things like this. I'm going to leave links down below. As I always share with you, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I do a lot of research, and I cite my research at citations.lowertoxiclife.com. Make sure you also grab my guide at lowertoxiclife.com as well, so that you can follow along this journey with me. And I'm going to be going in there and revamping a lot of my recipe suggestions and just making sure people are aware. So the final thing I wanted to share is exactly what I'm doing currently. One of the things that came to mind for me immediately, and that I learned through this book, and specifically through her videos even, is that drinking lemon water can help shed all of that. There's something about the citric acid or something that's in it that binds to the oxalate crystals and help flush them out of your body. So I've given up my morning tea and opted for 2 ounces of fresh squeezed lemon juice in a 16-ounce glass of water, and to that I add potassium citrate and magnesium. I add that to it and consume that first thing in the morning, again, to help flush my system. I've just recently started that. I'll be reporting back, so make sure you're subscribed and follow my playlist here on my carnivore keto journey so I can share a little bit more about what's going on with all of that. And then I've definitely incorporated more dairy, mostly in the form of goat and sheep dairy. Although I use like good culture cottage cheese, I definitely use some more organically, humanely raised cows type dairy as well. But I've started incorporating that into every meal. And then I am adding in a small amount of low oxalate foods into my carnivore journey. So that could be in the form of, the other day, I did ground bison and I added just a quarter of a cup of cauliflower rice, pure organic cauliflower rice, quarter of a cup, already cooked, lower oxalate. But part of it is to get your body from dumping so much all at one time and bringing in a slower amount of the oxalates to kind of commingle, if you will. I'm not using scientific terms, but to commingle with the oxalates that are already stored in your tissues and your organs and your bloodstream and your urinary tract and a lot of different areas like that that are causing issues. So the goal is to keep shedding it, but do it on a smaller, less volatile time frame so that I and you don't experience as much pain. If you have any experience with this, please leave it in the comments. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments. My goal is to help as many people as I can clear their body of these highly toxic oxalates that, by the way, the plants naturally put into, they're inborn into the plant because, as we say, every living thing has a desire to stay alive. Every living thing has a desire to stay alive, and plants and nuts and seeds are no different. So what they do is they incorporate these oxalates to ward off predators. They don't want animals eating them. They don't want humans eating them. They want to stay alive. And when you think about what the nut is or the seed is, that is how they procreate. And so they want to make sure that they're sustainable and that they live on. And that's where these oxalates, these toxins, and these poisons for humans and other animals come from out in nature. They're not a bad thing. They're only a bad thing if we as humans overconsume them and don't realize the havoc that they're wreaking on our intestines, our microbiome, our gut, and our overall elimination system. So I'm Jackie Ulmer, lowertoxiclife.com. Thanks for spending this time here with me, and be sure to watch this next video as I continue to share my journey with you.